totally open.
I think we're live. We did it.
Hey guys! We are out there. Do you see anyone
sure.
coming?
I don't know.
Let's go.
I think we did it.
Okay.
I hope we did it.
Yeah,
Live.
we're live.
Let me double check. Oh, I see the
There
black
they
numbers
are.
are starting to show up. Oh yeah, that's embarrassing. Yeah, that'll be in there forever. Yeah.
All right. Who are you?
I'm Roger Stanton, and I'm a faithful believer in Christ overcoming an addiction to lust and pornography, and I'm also the National Assimilation Coach for Celebrate Recovery.
Hey, Raj.
Hi, Sarah.
Welcome. my name is Sarah. I'm a grateful believer overcoming the effects of pornography in my marriage and currently overcoming insecurities. And we have someone right here to my right, but we're going to leave the suspense. It's going to be suspenseful. She's not even going to intro herself right now.
We're not going to let her talk.
No, not till it's her time. And then you're going to hear a lot from this person right
Kinda
here.
awkward, but all right. I like what we're doing.
We
Okay.
have some details before we get into
before we
the
get
story.
into this, here's what's happening. This is a huge week. This Thursday, we have our first ever online summit. You know, we were faced when COVID came up, we're faced with the decision, do we continue and do a summit or do we not, right? And we went online because what we heard from everybody out there was we still need training. We still have new leaders. We want to have training, right? And so that is why we're having our online summit this year. And I can tell you, it's going to be big. It's going to be really big. It's going to be really fun. We got to be part of some of the filming for it. And there's just so many brilliant people who are sharing their hearts and sharing training and just teaching us how to do this recovery thing.
Brand new information that you've never heard, so it's going to be good.
Yeah.
And it's $49, guys. It's $49. It's going to
Yeah.
be a party. It already is big. If you haven't heard the numbers, over 12,500 people have already signed up.
That's a ton.
I think
That's over 4 of the regular in-person summits combined.
Yes.
That's amazing.
I think 25 countries are represented, and at least one person from every state is signed up to attend. So do not miss out. Invite somebody. Invite your pastor. Invite your neighbor. CR is a pretty big deal, and so why do we keep it a secret, right? And so how do you sign up if you haven't already? There's still time. crsummits.com. Go on there. It'll walk you step by step. You can also go to celebraterecoverystore.com and you can pick up some merch,
New gear.
right? I mean,
I got a new CR shirt on.
the back
Showing
is
the
even
back.
cooler.
Look at that, Scott. Can you see
So
it?
Back up a
cool.
little closer. There you go.
How,
Yes.
Am I showing
And
it
your
right?
back looks really strong, Roger.
Oh, gosh. Thank you. It's embarrassing. All right.
Okay, I think that's all the details. Hey, if you're on here tonight, if you have questions, if you have prayer requests, we have such great leadership on right now.
National team,
The national
the
team, our
RDs,
ministry
the state
leads.
reps.
Yes, they're all on there to answer any question that you may have, answer any prayer requests that you may have. So put it on there. We want to connect with you.
Yeah. Okay. So let's get going.
Without further ado.
For the what? For the what? Yeah. No, that's okay. Keep moving. Yeah. All right. Okay. So here's what we have tonight. We have with us Kelsey. Kelsey is a personal friend of Sarah and mine, and Kelsey's also a leader in our Celebrate Recovery. And you may recognize Kelsey's face because a few months back, Kelsey was highlighted on the Celebrate Recovery national page, and I'll trigger your memory with, it was a big car crash picture and a picture of her family and her little story in the words on that post. And we're bringing Kelsey out tonight with us to talk about her story because we know her story is so relevant and will impact your life just like it's impacted ours.
And testimonies are such a huge part of the Celebrate Recovery program. I mean, I think they reveal the hope, right?
That's right.
That all of us need to keep going.
Yeah.
And so we want you to hear more of her story.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
So without further
To
do.
do.
A do or you do.
Yes. So Kelsey, intro yourself for us.
my name is Kelsey. I am a faithful believer in Jesus Christ, and I am overcoming an addiction to alcohol that stems from low self-worth. And I just want to first start off by saying it's such an honor to be here. 4 years ago, I could not have even imagined sitting in this seat talking about my recovery journey. It's pretty, God is amazing, and I'm really excited to share tonight.
That's awesome. I think you're up. You're gonna ask the first question.
Oh.
Tell us a tad more.
Yeah.
Tell us a tad
Am
more.
I?
just
Okay.
about your,
Okay.
Tell us, give us a little more. What do you do in your day to day?
Yeah. Okay. Well, first and foremost, I'm a mom. I have 2 young boys, Bear and Miles. Bear is 6 and Miles is 1. I was born and raised in Huntington Beach, California, which is like 20 minutes from
Saddleback.
from
Lake
Saddleback.
Forest, yeah.
So yeah, born and raised in Huntington Beach, California. My husband is Special Forces with the U.S. Army, and we got stationed up here. So we've been out in Washington for about, since the end of 2014. So it's been about 5 years now. Hobbies of mine, I love volleyball, super passionate about volleyball. There's not a ton of beach volleyball out here, which is kind of disappointing.
Not a ton of beach out here. Yeah.
But that's okay. I still play. I still have found some leagues, and so I love, and I mean, the biggest part of my life really is my recovery. I'm really plugged in, and it's a huge part of my day-to-day life, and I'm really involved, and it's a big part of my life. When people ask me, what lights your fire, I always talk about my recovery, because it's just paramount in my life. So I can't.
Now, it hasn't always been this way.
No,
Right?
no.
So you mentioned 4 years ago, and we want to
Back up.
Yeah.
before that and figure out, how did you get into Celebrate Recovery? Like, how did
Yeah.
you get positioned in life such that Celebrate Recovery could offer you help?
Yeah. Well, I guess it's important for me to start by saying I had a really good childhood. I have an amazing family. I have a twin brother who I'm very close with. My family vacationed, and I was really involved in sports, and had lots of friends and this big extended family. And it's important for me to say that because, the enemy doesn't discriminate.
Right.
And, addictions and hurts, habits, and hangups, they will and can affect us all.
Yeah.
So with all that being said, I do remember early on in my childhood just having this really heavy, overwhelming sense of inadequacy. Just this dark cloud of like, I'm not good enough. I'm not good enough at sports. I'm not smart enough. My friends don't really like me. My brother is better at me than everything. And it was just, I vividly remember just feeling very inadequate. And I did a lot of comparing myself as a child. Friends would come into my life, and it was always like, I was always on the negative side of that, of like, oh, well, she's prettier than me, or she's skinnier than me, or all of this dumb stuff that you think about as children. It wasn't dumb to me back then, and it was really important to me for whatever reason. And I just remember that playing a really big part of my life. So sort of fast forward, I guess, into my teen years, very involved in volleyball. I started doing like commercial modeling stuff, so like Skechers and Petco and things like that. And I loved that because, heaven forbid, somebody, was giving me attention. I had this very unhealthy relationship with that. And I experienced, I'm gonna take this pretty
You get heavy quick.
serious.
Right?
Yeah, very quick. But I experienced very heavy sexual trauma when I was 16 years old. I was raped by a casting director, and it was a hostage situation. And I managed to get out of there, and I had lied to my volleyball coach and told him I had a doctor's appointment, and then I had lied to my mom and told her I was at volleyball, so nobody really knew where I was. And at 16 years old, I was driving. So I made the trip up to Los Angeles, which was about an hour from Huntington Beach, and you guys, I held on to that, and I didn't share that with anyone, and I was disgusted with myself. I mean, I was like, this is my fault. I was the one who made the choice to lie. And the sad thing is that I figured it was God punishing me for making that decision. I was like, I deserve this. I deserve this because I lied. And it just, and I don't believe I started drinking directly because of that, but I do believe that the feelings that stemmed from that just drove my insecurities, to the ground.
Wow.
So after that had happened, I I was unhealthy, mentally and emotionally and spiritually very unhealthy. I really didn't start drinking, and I didn't have this big like aha moment, like I was hooked to alcohol from the first sip. That wasn't my experience, but it did give me that checkout. It was almost like none of those insecurities mattered when I was drinking, and I felt very confident. This false confidence. I felt like I was funnier. I felt like I was more creative. I felt like just this really false sense of like strength, right? That when I was drinking, and I started working in Los Angeles. I worked in the entertainment industry. I worked for a handful of different celebrities as their personal assistant, which sounds awesome and it sounds very cool, but it's also a very selfless role. And I was working 24/7. And I also tried really hard to fit in. It was very important to me that people liked me and that I fit in. And it wasn't a healthy, like it wasn't a healthy desire. It was very unhealthy. So I would drink when they drank, even if it was, you know, in the morning or at noon, or I thought it was cool. And I was so young that I wanted so badly to fit in with everyone. So I was like, yes, great. You know, it's margaritas at 10 a.m.
I think that's a really important point that you just said.
Yeah.
Like, sometimes it starts just because you want to be accepted and fit in and be part of the culture.
It's the scene
that's
that
with
was happening.
You,
That
right?
is exactly how it started. And I started drinking, you know, and I do have alcoholism that runs in my family, and it is important for me to say that, you know, because I started making very poor choices with my alcohol. So I started drinking a lot more. I started drinking alone. I started drinking every night, and before you knew it, my tolerance was very high. You know, I got to the point where I would wake up and I would need a drink to function. Those of you that have struggled with alcoholism can understand sort of drinking against your will. I was drinking just to feel normal. You know, I was waking up every morning with withdrawals. I was shaky. My thoughts weren't there. I had a hard time like putting sentences together. And
You're
alcohol.
how old? Sorry.
So at this point, I was about 22 years old.
Okay.
And that is really when my addiction started taking over my life. And during this time, I wore this huge facade that I was great. I was fun.
Sure.
You know, I had a lot of friends. I was fine.
Now
you know?
facade is heavy.
Oh my goodness
Yeah.
gracious. And I played it really well. And, you know, alcoholism it's cunning, baffling, and powerful.
Yeah.
And I was so good at masking this idea that everything was great. In April of 2011, my ex-boyfriend, so my boyfriend at the time, was living in San Francisco, and you know, I went back and forth making these promises to people that cared about me that I would remain sober, you know, or that I would be sober, and but I was at the point where I was sneaking alcohol and being very manipulative and deceiving, and so we got into a fight one night because I was sneaking alcohol. I had it in a water bottle. I was running off to the bathroom, and finally he caught on, like, what's happening? And, you know, I was getting drunker and drunker by the night, and although I felt like I was doing a great job at hiding it, I wasn't. So we ended up getting in this big fight, and he wouldn't let me leave. I threatened to drive all the way back to Huntington Beach, which is about, I could be wrong, but it's like 5 hours if I remember correctly. And he wouldn't let me leave. So I slept in the other room, and the next morning it was 6 a.m. and I got up and was like, I'm leaving, you know, all stubborn. And I got in my car, and I had remembered that I still had alcohol in my car. You know, that was sort of left over for one of my grocery runs. And I was feeling so hungover, and I was still a little buzzed, and I was still just not doing well. And so I thought, gosh, I'm just going to have a couple, just so I can normalize, I'm going to have a couple sips of alcohol, and I'm going to start the journey home, and it's going to stabilize me, and it'll be fine, totally fine. And so I did. I drank, and that's the last thing I remember. It turns out I drove up the off-ramp of the 5 freeway. At this point, I had made it to Modesto, California, which was about 2 hours.
Wow.
Drove up the off-ramp of the 5 freeway going the opposite direction. I got a mile down going the opposite direction, and I was hit by a semi-truck. I shattered both my legs, and I broke my back. And
At 22.
At 22. And I was airlifted from the accident site. It was on the news. The morning traffic backups were insane because of this. I mean, my car, you guys, the pictures of my car.
Is that the picture that was?
Yes. So that was the picture that I had posted. Yeah. There was like a 2x2 space in the car where I was. And the whole thing was tragic. I was in a wheelchair for 6 months. And the most tragic part of it is that I spent 6 months of my life physically recovering, but I had so much work that I needed to do spiritually and mentally and emotionally, and I dismissed that because the most important thing to me was walking again. And so I did that. I put 100% effort into physically recovering, and literally the second I was back on my feet, I was back at the liquor store.
Wow.
But because I cared so much about what other people think of me, I didn't want to drink in front of them because heaven forbid they see me drink after this horrific car accident. So I started sneaking my alcohol, and I would get very sneaky with it and drink when no one was around, or even drink when people were around, just hit it, just run off to the bathroom, or, it just got very sneaky.
So this is now controlling your life.
This is now alcoholism.
You've already had a massive failure.
Huge consequence.
You're still working to keep this going in your life. How did you, because that wasn't the end, then there was more, right?
That's the first major consequence.
And it was, and granted, I have 30 minutes, so I don't want to go into all of the consequences, but they were major. At one point, I was sleeping at my mom's house because I didn't want to be alone, and they had gone to bed, and I sneak out of my door as soon as I go to sleep, and I start drinking their alcohol, and we wake up the next morning, and my mom comes downstairs, and she can smell it. And so she starts dumping out all the alcohol, and I'm panicking because I'm like, I know I need that alcohol because I'm going through withdrawals at this point. And so I went into the bathroom, and I'm scrounging under the bathroom counter or cabinet, and I see rubbing alcohol. And I think, that has the word alcohol in it, so that's going to at least stabilize me. And so I drank rubbing alcohol, and 2 days, I was in a coma for 2 days. I immediately went unconscious.
So that was it, right?
What, my journey?
Yeah.
No.
That's the end?
No.
Should be.
This is how powerful this is how powerful the enemy had a grip on me.
Yeah.
And the farther I went into my addiction, the farther I felt like I was getting from Jesus. There's that analogy of, Jesus being the spotlight for some, there's this theater, right? And there's the main star that's standing on stage, and everything is dark in this audience, in this crowd. And there's one spotlight on the stage. It's this very narrow spotlight, and there's a man standing in the spotlight, and everyone can see him, and all is great. And then he slowly starts stepping out of the spotlight, and he starts disappearing. And that was God. God was right there. It was me stepping out of the spotlight, but here he is. Please, come back into the spotlight. I'm here. I'm the light. I'm reaching for you. And I wasn't going there. So, major consequences even from that experience, and this is the thing, is I would get a couple months of sobriety.
Sure.
I even get 6 months of sobriety, not recovery. There's a difference there. I'd be sober, but not in recovery in any way, shape, or form. And I'd be doing great, and then, my ego would get in the way, and I'd start thinking, I got this.
Yeah.
I'd visit newcomers and be like, you want me to tell you how to get sober? I can tell you that.
Yeah.
And, and before long, I'd be drinking again. So, one of my last major relapses was a suicide plan. I did not want to be on this earth anymore, and I couldn't stay sober, and I just thought that was going to be my life. I was in and out of jail at this point. I had 3 DUIs. I was looking at prison sentences. My husband and I were legally separated. I wasn't trusted with my kids. I had lost everything, my job, my car, everything, physically I had lost, and along with everything emotionally and mentally and spiritually, I just was bankrupt. And so I had attempted suicide, and I was put on in the 72-hour hold. And I will never forget, this nurse comes in, and I could see her kind of shuffling around, and she has tears in her eyes because she's like, this poor girl, she's young, and what is happening, and she's kind of looking at the doctor, and she's like trying to tinkering around, and I'm like, oh, she's gonna wait, and then when the doctor leaves, she's gonna lecture me. It's gonna be one of those nurses that lectures me, because I had so many people that had tried. And you know what she said? She comes in and she says, I know that was a suicide attempt, and so we're keeping you here for 72 hours and this and that. And she said, so tell me, I want to hear from you. Are you trying to die? Are you wanting to? And I just was quiet. I was stubborn, and I was just looking at her. And the very next question she asked me, she says, Kelsey, do you know Jesus Christ? And I, like, goosebumps. Yeah. And and I will never, until the day that I die, I will never forget. And I wish I could go back to that woman, and I would love to find her at some place, because it didn't mean as much to me in that moment. I was just like rolling my eyes like, oh, okay, here we go. And that's all she said. And she left.
Wow.
And she just put her hand on my shoulder and she walked away. And then it was like, the doctors came back in and this and that. And so as soon as I got out of the hospital at that point, I go back into my very depressing, sober living studio apartment. There's a mattress on the floor. It's just very depressing.
Your husband at this point basically said, you're not coming back here.
So he had, for 8 years, he was sick of it. I mean, he was tough love at that point. And he was like, you are not staying in this house. You need to get out and figure this out. So, so I went back to my apartment, and all I wanted to do was drink, and I got on my knees and I just said, God, if you are there, help me. Just help me. I'm surrendering everything. I'm giving you everything, my heart, my mind, my body, my soul. Please take it and do something. Like, I was just, and there wasn't some crazy bright light or anything miraculous that happened, but I stayed sober that day. And God put the desire for me to call one of my friends and tell her that I didn't want to be alone. And so I slept on her couch for the next 30 days.
Wow.
And I put my ego aside and I listened to her. She stood in as my temporary sponsor, and she said, you are going to do exactly what I tell you for the next 30 days. And I listened, and that's all God. God gave me this desire to do that. And so Celebrate Recovery was the very first place that I showed up. And I wasn't there because I wanted to be sober. I was there because, I was checking off this box, the court required that I needed to be there. And, slowly but surely, and by no means was it overnight, but God started placing people in my life and scriptures in my life and lessons that just hit me in this way that kept me coming back, but only because I was open, I stayed honest, and I was willing to do something different.
Wow.
And so I did it, and I listened, and again, it's by the grace of God, I leaned in, and I started serving on the leadership team because I wanted to, I was afraid to not be in the middle. Right? I didn't, like, I was told if the farther I get away, the wolves will grab you, so stay in the middle of the pack, so I did that.
So you have experience with other 12-step programs.
I do.
Why CR? So Kelsey, many of you don't know, she drives 30 minutes one way and 30 minutes home to Celebrate Recovery. Why CR? Why is it set apart from other 12-step programs?
So I think it's important to say I struggled for 8 years in my addiction. 8 years in and out of recovery. I went to rehab 12 times, in and out of jails and institutions, and just madness. And for so long I was told, and this was my experience, but I was told for so long, you have to keep your recovery first. Just keep your recovery first. And it wasn't until I stepped into the doors of CR that I was told God needs to come first. God first, and then your recovery will follow. And two things that separate AA and CR is Jesus Christ. I believe that the only way to God is through Jesus Christ. And the farther I got away from a drink, the more I realized that my internals needed to change. There's this saying that, an alcoholic, shows up at a recovery program for help with her drinking, but stays for help with her thinking. Right? And for me, like, plugging in at CR, that requires that my thinking's going to be reconfigured,
changed
by the Bible, though, not just from the world, but based off of biblical scriptures. And I thought, well, if my thinking needs to be all reevaluated, I want it to be towards Jesus. And
that was the first thing. What's the second thing?
The Beatitudes. The very first, realize I'm not God. I mean, that, like,
That's kind of a wake-up moment.
But no, and I say that
this.
because I tried so hard for so long to control people, places, and things.
Yes.
And,
Yep.
you know, I manipulated sponsors, and I manipulated friends, and it was just, I had to just, you know, and I always get frustrated when people were like, just let go and let God. I'm like, what does that mean?
Yeah,
and
sure.
it wasn't until I started living that to just trust God with the process. And I didn't know what the outcome was going to be. I didn't know if my marriage was ever going to be salvaged.
Wow.
I didn't know if I was ever going to see my kids again, but I had to just take it one day at a time and trust God and trust his plan for my life. And I'm so glad I did.
Your husband is right now in the pool with your how old child?
So Miles is 15 months and Bear is 6. And my husband teeters between the ages of like 13 and 45, depending on, you know, what day you get him.
Yeah, it's true. And you guys you experience a restored marriage now.
Yes,
You experience
so many gifts.
restored motherhood.
And you're getting to experience some of these things with Miles. It makes me feel a little emotional that maybe you weren't able to be present for with Bear.
Yes, I got sober when Bear was 2. And
Bear's your oldest.
Bear is my oldest. He's 6 years old now. So by the grace of God, this October I'll have 4 years of sobriety, which is just, I mean, such a miracle. I get to live, and I get to make working amends every day to my family, and they get to see me play this recovery journey out. And it, again, as I mentioned in the beginning, recovery is such a huge part of my life. I'm so passionate about it because of what it's done and because of what Jesus has done in my life, and I'm so eager to share that because there's so many people that think that recovery is not for them. And I was one of them. I thought that I just chalked myself up to just believe that sobriety was not going to be for me. I didn't think that I would ever be happy or fun without alcohol. And God has blessed me with this. The obsession to drink was something that I had a hard time with. I believed that I would never have that relief of the obsession to drink. It was strong. I always thought about alcohol. I thought that was just something I was going to have to live with and work with. And God completely removed the obsession to drink. You know, I haven't, when things go wrong in my life, you know, and by all means, I'm still making mistakes every day. But my mistakes don't look like grabbing a bottle of alcohol and checking out and being out for weeks on end. My mistakes might look like lashing out at my husband or, you know, or my kids, because I work a recovery program, I get to make those amends to them every day, and I get to see my part in things. I highly recommend, and it's kind of weird, but I highly recommend the 12 steps to everyone. I mean, I think everybody can glean and
literally
get anyone.
No matter
you can replace.
perfect or holy they are.
It's just, you don't have to be a struggling alcoholic to experience these incredible rewards that Jesus blesses you with through recovery.
So most people who are listening to this will probably understand Celebrate Recovery, maybe even in leadership in Celebrate Recovery. But there may be some people who are listening who are kind of on the edge, or maybe they kind of feel done, or they're coasting a bit, not engaging, not working. What would you say to somebody who either hasn't taken the dive or kind of maybe feels like they've graduated from CR leadership and just kind of like, it's been good? Complacency
is I have gone through seasons of complacency. I believe that you will only get out what you put into your own recovery. If you are feeling like you aren't, you know, and for whatever reason you're feeling like you're not wanted, or there's too many friends that I'm not a part of. I know I dealt with those mind monsters. I dealt with those mind monsters.
I do today.
You lean in. I mean, I can't say that enough. I mean, it's the enemy who's trying to pull you out. And, you know, use that analogy of staying in the middle of the pack. I mean, it helped me tremendously to visualize being in the center of the pack. And the farther I get away from the sides, the easier it is for someone to steal you away. And to know that you're not alone. I know it's a really interesting and difficult and unique season that we're in right now with COVID. And call someone every day. Call someone every day who can. Those Me Too conversations are the most powerful conversations you can have. yeah, I mean, reach out to your leaders and ask them how you can get plugged in. There are things to do regardless of this time that we're in. They might say, hey, great, you know, I know that such and such is struggling. Why don't you give her a call?
Yes.
You know, they will give you something to do.
that.
Just reach out to your leaders, reach out to your friends. I can't recommend, you know, schedule a Zoom call with some friends. Just make sure you show up to CR, however that looks right now in the season. Make it a priority to show up, even if that means, you know, hiring a sitter or you know, I don't know.
Whatever you got to do.
Well, and the
throw
team,
some face masks on your kids.
Yeah.
That's right.
Well, the team is going above and beyond. If you can't leave your house, so you can show up every night. I know Pastor Johnny is teaching the lessons every Saturday night, and so we're still providing some meat and potatoes, so to speak, for you. And what I heard Kelsey say is get and stay connected so that the enemy you're not easily taken out by the enemy. That's good.
It was good. Kelsey,
Thank you.
Thank you
I know
for
you-
having
your
me.
story.
what you may
Thank
not know
you.
is that she actually has done a lot of work in recovery. And so if you look her up on Facebook, she has her own Facebook and social media platform that she's doing for recovery as well. And so ask her anything. And if you can get to know her husband, that's even better. He's phenomenal. Okay.
Praise out.
Let's pray. God, we love you. Thank you for what you're doing in Celebrate Recovery. Thank you for what you're doing in our hearts.
Yeah.
God, thank you for sending your son Jesus.
Yes.
God, so we could have a connection with you again, God. I just thank you that we can lay everything at the foot of the cross, God. Whatever trauma, whatever hardship, whatever thing we're walking through today, God, this unrest or this confusion, God, whatever it is, God, we can put it at your feet and ask for your help, God. So we're going to do that. We're going to continue to do that, God. And I pray that as we do that, we will grow in courage and favor and faith and health, God. We love you. We thank you. In Jesus' mighty name we pray.
Amen.
Amen. We will see you
Love
all
you guys.
online Thursday. We will be online in the chat, hanging out,
Yeah, we
partying
will.
with everybody. So we'll see you soon.